It was a poor England performance. The Germans didn't get knocked out of this World Cup because of that particular decision. They got knocked out because they're not a very good side.
Absolutely preposterous.
It's not about winning, it's about participating. No, hang on a second, you've got to win. And I look at Kane, now, I'm a bit perplexed, I have to say. He has underachieved with this level of player available to him. I'm underwhelmed by Declan Rice. It's a mile off. Well, we've gone from feast to famine again, which is the nature of England's football. You know, we looked in certain people's eyes like world beaters against Iran. I thought Iran in that individual game were very poor, and England did what they should have done and put them to the sword. Now, in the second game, as much as we were lacking in a lot of things, you have to give a lot of credit to the US because they were a very decent side.
Oh, yeah.
They were very energetic. They moved the ball very well. They spread it across the pitch. They were everything that England weren't. Now, what I think the criticism comes from isn't the fact that we came out of a game where the USA were very good. It was about the nature of how we played, the lack of seeming dynamism about us, the lack of pace on the ball, the lack of movement, the lack of anything from the team. And we looked a very low energy, I don't want to say low rent, but we didn't look a particularly good side.
You're a lot calmer about this today. I mean, in the car park on Friday night, you were doing your nut.
I thought they were crap on Friday, and I don't think there's anything else you can say about it. But I didn't think they were world beaters against Iran. I thought that's the performance that we should put out. That's the job we should do. So I wouldn't have gone heading to the moon on when we beat Iran, and I'm not going to head into the pits of despair for the performance against the USA. What I felt was the England team didn't put a performance out in keeping with the expectations. And the problem with expectations is if you increase expectations and you don't meet them, people become more vociferous in their reaction to it.
Yeah.
I felt sorry for the fans that went to that game because it was a poor England performance. Now, that poor performance was exacerbated by the quality of the US team. And if the US team had a centre forward, we might have found ourselves in a situation where we'd have lost that game. The Germans didn't get knocked out of this World Cup because of that particular decision. That's the ultimate part of the equation. But
exactly.
they got knocked out because they're not a very good side, and they got beat by the Japanese. They weren't particularly great against the Spanish, and they nearly got their heads handed to them by Costa Rica last night. I take no pleasure in the idea that the Germans get paid back for their outlook and attitudes in life sometimes, or they wanted to come here and tell everyone they were silenced. Now they've been silenced properly by being ejected from the tournament by their own failure to achieve. I think you can make a case for a query and a question and evaluation about the decision that was made. But if we're going to inflate that and conflate it into a situation where the Germans can feel very hard done by, I'm not going to be in that camp.
I hear that he's been out here for a year, living out here for a year. I think maybe some people have got in his ear and he's got a certain view based upon what he now thinks his view should be. Look, I mean, the FIFA as an organisation, they're either incompetent, full stop, or there's something more sinister about them, and I think it's something more sinister. He's cut from the same cloth. I think this is an organisation that should have has an NFP mentality, a not-for-profit position, yet has $2.7 billion in the bank. I think that our football is being hijacked by a Swiss environment that gives me great concern, and Infantino's lack of discipline and lack of ability to behave like a football administrator rather than a moral arbitrator that seemed to have some investment in the argument he was making, I thought was absolutely preposterous. On one hand, he talks about not addressing these issues, then he's involving himself with using football as some sort of armistice mentality in the Ukraine, and now he's talking about the reality of how the world is seen through his eyes, in terms of, I am a black man, I mean, it's just bloody ridiculous.
You won't realise how good this fella's been until 2 years or 4 years after he's left. You're as good as what you leave behind.
But that's kind of, in my view, it's a typical football view, which is that, look at the...
That's our profession, isn't it?
Hang on. What you're in the business of is outcomes. In every other walk of life, the outcome determines. So if you're in the business of winning, when you win, that's what the outcome. So when you look at the body of work, look what I've done. No, look at what you've won. Look at the opportunities that you didn't take. And you have to be prepared to have critical and fair evaluation. We talk about the young players.
It sounds like this is Gareth's last chance as far as you're concerned.
Well, no, I mean, I don't think it's his last chance. I don't think there's a necessity to give him a contract before this World Cup, and I think it should have waited until after the World Cup, and all it's done is protected him financially if the World Cup doesn't go the way he wants it to, or if he decides he doesn't want to be there anymore. If you put an England under-21 manager in place, what are you going to get? You're going to get young players through. If you can't manage young players, what are you doing as a manager? Why would you be anywhere near a group of players if you aren't capable of having a strong influence influence over young players. So with that in mind, it's like, I use an analogy. You get a lawyer in charge of business, you'll end up in court. You get a person that manages young players, you'll have a young England team. It gives you an opportunity to set the precedent that you want.
What Stuart's saying is that, you know, what Gareth Southgate is doing for the nation is bigger than just being judged on winning, you know, which every England fan wants. No, but it's not because... no, Simon. That's a load of old coppers. It's not. So I'll tell you why. It's not because it's easy for a manager to go into a club, into a team, into a national team, and win, and then leave a trail of destruction behind them.
Oh, really?
And you can get managers. There's managers out there. There's managers out there who could do that.
Give me an example, Hal, of people that have gone in and won something and left a legacy of decay. What happens with most people that win something is they set blueprints.
The biggest one, Mourinho is the prime example. You know, you can go into a club, win, have a level of success. You know, they may not have won something. They could have had the same level of success that Gareth Southgate has had, but behind them is a trail of destruction. And what Gareth Southgate is doing is the complete opposite to that. He's implementing an infrastructure, a level of longevity, which actually can offer continuity beyond his time as an England manager.
By doing what?
By creating a culture which is more than just solely about winning. It's about togetherness. It's about building longevity ultimately.
For me, you live in a world, and this is what football does. What it does, it baits and switch. It's not about winning. It's about participating. No, hang on a second. You've got to win, and you've got to build a culture. The culture of winning is what sport is about, not bloody participation.
I think he is better in these group games than he was in the group games in Russia, even though he scored more goals. I think he looks...
In what way?
Physically. I think he looks physically better. He looks sharp and stronger. In Russia, he looked a bit ponderous. I mean, he got the pens and he got some goals. Yeah. So the goals don't concern me.
I've sat beside you, Simon, at the England games, and I can feel your frustration because you know they're more than decent.
Yeah.
You know the players have got what it takes to go deep in this tournament, but you want to see it. You want to be on the edge of your seat. You want to see positivity.
I want to see something that excites people. I want to see something that gets people out of their seats. I want to see... I mean, I've watched the games that I've enjoyed in this tournament. I've enjoyed the Saudi Arabian game against Argentina. I've enjoyed the Argentinian game last night. You know, I've enjoyed those sort of games because there's been... enjoyed the Mexican game because there's something about those games that gets you going, involved. I watch England and I go, well, I want you to win. I want us to be exciting. I want us to be easy on the eye. I want us to be ambitious. I want them to see them move the ball around and zing it around. And we don't. And I look at Kane, and I'm a bit perplexed, I have to say, about your description of Kane being in better nick than he was in 2018. I'm marginally disappointed in Harry Kane.
Yeah, that's because you're looking at it from an output of what the numbers say. I'm looking
at it through my own eyes. My eyes are not betraying me.
Does Martinez land in a top job?
Debatable. I mean, he has, if you look at it on the body of work, had a remarkable win record at Belgium. He's got a 70% win record, and if you look at the pantheon of international managers, he is above most of their win records. But the problem is not in this tournament, but in previous tournaments, he's laid down a marker of being unsuccessful and wasted opportunities. And you have to look at it and say whether the back four was ageing now. In previous tournaments, they weren't. And you don't just look at Eden Hazard, you look at Kevin De Bruyne, you look at the absolute quality that they've had in that side. And you have to say, despite having had this quite remarkable win record of 70%, he has underachieved with this level of player available to him. So will he come out with reputations intact? I think he will have to be diminished. I was surprised he got the job in the first place. And what he's done with the job, I don't think has been remarkable in terms of outcomes because he hasn't won anything. He hasn't achieved potentially... Now, of course, you have to look then and say what a remarkable country Belgium is for producing this level of player. We talk about golden generations. With due respect to some of the players they've got in their midst, some of our players couldn't light a candle, some of theirs.
Okay, fair enough. They're regarded, though, as a golden generation. Is he a golden generation? Is he a best-in-class manager?
Clearly not. Because if you've got this embarrassment of riches on the pitch, you need to have that complemented by a manager that can either get them across the line or affect outcomes far more far more meaningfully than he has done. And so with that in mind, I think he'll be disappointed. Now, he talks about long-term projects. You were given a long-term project. You've had a reasonable amount of time. No one can suggest that this was a fickle situation, that this contract was this competition, win, lose or draw, was going to be his departure. You have to look back over the body of work and say, well, your school report would say probably could have done better. He's a player that is coming with a great reputation. I'm not entirely sure he's having the greatest World Cup, but I would expect that at the end of this season you're going to find Declan Rice with a decision.
Yeah. You know a bit on this, don't you, Danny?
Well, I mean, yeah, I've spoken to him many times. He's certainly got desires and ambitions to play at the very top, which is Champions League, and win trophies. He's not going to do that at West Ham. Simple as that. So he's got to leave. I mean, he's given him an extra year, to be honest.
That's good of him.
Well, let's put in perspective of footballers across the country, across the world. You know, they tend to go when they're at his level sooner than he's gone. So because
but that's his club at the moment, the West Ham.
Yeah, and you can never doubt his commitment to the cause when he plays for them.
No.
It's not affected his attitude or application on the pitch, the fact that he stayed an extra season. But I think last summer there would have been some sort of agreement that this summer, if the fee's right, he can go. It's just the fee. Because the extortionate amount now they're asking for young English players who've got talent is remarkable. And who's going to pay it? There's only a few clubs who can pay what West Ham wants. So that's going to be the stumbling block.
What would they want, Simon? If he's your player, how much?
Well, look, I mean, the market is the market, and people will pay what they're prepared to pay. I mean, obviously, you look at transactions like Jack Grealish, and I can't make a case for him being a £100 million footballer, but he's a £100 million footballer because Aston Villa were canny enough to put that as a release clause, and Man City were prepared to pay it. I don't think there's such a thing in place at West Ham. We've heard them talk and speak about there is no price, and if he's a £100 million player, David Moyes said, we've got one in our dressing room. I'm underwhelmed. And probably there's going to be a collective inhalation of breath. I'm underwhelmed by Declan Rice. I think he's a very good player, but I'm trying to work out what a £100 million footballer should look like. We're living in the past with these guys. Gareth Bale isn't fit enough. He made a decision to go and play in America. You're preparing for a tournament that your country has not featured in for 64 years. You have to question that decision.
Yep.
He's not impacted because he's not fit enough. Aaron Ramsey is the same. And you have to look at that and say, that's a tragedy for Wales, because at 33 years of age, we had this discussion last week on the sofa about people's physicality against their psychological approach, and Souness, I think, emphatically believes that some of the ideals behind why Gareth Bale is struggling to compete at this level at 33 years of age is not necessarily about physical element. It's more to do with his psychological approach and his approach to the scenario. So he is in a certain mindset, which will then manifest a certain feeling in him.
Yeah, I think they both start. If you ask me, I think they'll both.
But let's be honest, the point that Simon is making, Gareth Bale gave up on being a top-level footballer a long time ago. He gave up on hitting the highest level when he accepted just sitting on the bench at Real Madrid. He gave it up when he decided to go to the MLS. I think he gave up.
I agree.
And I think he would have been better served.
Give it up, Al?
Better served going to Cardiff and playing in a more competitive division, playing Saturday, Tuesday in places, building himself up to be the best possible Gareth Bale.
The best one in the world. You got to Cardiff after Real Madrid.
I understand the perspective, but actually, you know, from an actuality, you know, the MLS is a physical league, and so of course we're not talking. Have you played in the MLS?
No, but I put a team out in America and I watched the American teams.
So what I'm saying, I'm not saying. So from a quality perspective, there is a gap. From a physical perspective, the gap is very small, and you can see that because actually Gareth Bale has struggled physically, you know, and it's not, again, I'm not saying that it's because of his approach, etc.
But in going to America, what was the driving force of Gareth Bale?
Look, so that's his own decision. So, you know, you have to respect players' decisions. But actually,
it's money and lifestyle.
It's money and lifestyle.
Okay, but from an actual, but look, him going to America, MLS, I'm just letting you know, physically, it's as demanding as a lot of leagues in Europe. Right, so just before, it's not a farmers' league. It's not a, it is a very physically competitive league. And what did Gareth Bale need? He needed physical conditioning. And look, it hasn't happened. It hasn't manifested. But the intentions of going there actually aren't, in my opinion, what you're alluding to. You have to
look at the professionalism of this situation. And whilst Gareth Bale is entitled to a lot of legacy plaudits, this country, in its achievements from 2016 to where it is now, has predominantly been carried by the achievements of Gareth Bale. You get to a 64-year watershed moment by getting into a World Cup, and your key component part is Bale. He's 33 years of age, and he's playing in, I don't care what you say about the American leagues, I've watched enough of it, it's a mile off from where he needed to be prepared for a World Cup.
I agree.
It's a mile off.